I'm flipping through, and sometimes I get a little curious. Marriage that I've had, having the ounce of veracity and braveness that I've had to have to be myself. And personally, when it comes to who I'm attracted to, I tend to be attracted to men who are fairly dominant, fairly hardworking, fairly driven, fairly unafraid of what people think. You know, I don't give that many things, right? I want to date someone who doesn't give that many things. And I find that straight men give as many, like, they've passed their limit of things, right? They give so much of a that they constantly have to reinforce it. And sometimes reinforcing it means abusing you. Sometimes reinforcing it means pushing you down, making you feel shitty. And I'm not interested in that, right? So I will tell you a little bit more about really sort of more of the reasons why I started to really sort of be more open to bisexual men. Now, like I mentioned, on these dating sites for trans women, you would have a lot of men who would advertise and frame themselves as heterosexual, right? I had a situation when I was in college where I was talking to this guy for a while on to a trans dating site, right? And he happened to live in the city where I lived in, right? And so this was, I believe, my sophomore year of college. So I was fairly early in my, social transition and things like that. And one day he popped up in my school. CalArts was like the fun place to go if you lived in the community. Valencia is fairly conservative, fairly boring, and CalArts is like the weird place on the hill. So it was pretty common for locals to come and like have their little parties at CalArts and try to join in, right? And so what ended up happening is we're at a Thursday night gallery party, and there he is, right? And so I walk up to him, trying to be cute and say hello, and he like literally looks at me and then darts across the campus. Like, he was so afraid of someone knowing that we had any association that he literally ran away. He literally ran away. Now, that really frustrated me at the time because back then I gave a fuck about what men thought about me. So I was really frustrated with that, right? But there's a lot of fish in the pond, so I jumped right back onto that transgender dating site. And so now I'm flipping through, and sometimes I get a little curious and like see what the girls are around me. You know what I mean? I'm a little curious about that. And I'm flipping through, and wouldn't you know that the same boy who ran away from me on campus is up there cross-dressing, and his profile was so night and day. The profile that he had, right, as a straight guy was, he's Mr. Manly McManderson, think of literally any white kid from suburbia. He's got the hat going on, he drives a truck, he wears cargos, he's got a goddamn, one of those Ed Hardy shirts on. Like, that was him. That was who this kid was. But you look at his other profile, and he's a sissy slut who loves sucking. And, I have my issues with sissification, fetishism, maybe we'll make a whole video about that, but, it was night and day. It was complete night and day. And this wasn't the only guy that this happened to, where I would see men who would only frame themselves as, like, the most heterosexual of all heterosexuals and ever heterosexual. I would find them cross-dressing, looking for men, and there's nothing wrong with that. But these men have become very, very aware that a lot of trans women are very insecure. A lot of trans women feel a lot of validation through the men who sleep with them, and so they made the deliberate decision to frame themselves the way that they needed to be framed to get what they wanted from trans women, which is frequently sex, and that happens to me a lot. And, while I'm not into cross-dressers or sissies, or I have a really large issue with that fetish. It's not something for me.
I'll take a sissy and a cross-dresser. This is where I pause with her at. I love you, girl, but I'll take a sissy and I'll take a cross-dresser any day if y'all out there. That's why I disagree with my girl at. Other than that, holler.
Someone who could be honest with me, because for a very long time I thought to myself, if I'm with a man who likes men, that means that he might potentially see me as a man, right? I want to make it very feeling that I am outside of being a woman, right? I'm a woman. I don't really have a debate about it. Y'all can debate about it, but I don't have a debate about it. Neither do most people I tend to date. So I had a lot of, I felt a lot like if a man I'm dating is also attracted to men, that might be, he might see me that way, and so he's invalidating my gender by dating me. I had a lot of that sort of thing going on in my head. And it kind of took me a while to understand that, the attraction that someone has to another person doesn't really have anything to do with it.
I want to pause right here for a minute. Now, I love my girl, don't get me wrong. But like I said, I like all kinds of men. I like sissy men. I like masculine men. I like men in the middle. And if I become bisexual, I like feminine women, in between women, and masculine women. I'm kind of more neutral. I just want to say it like that. All right, back to her.
You know what I mean? Like, just because a partner of mine is attracted to men does not mean that he sees me as a man. And when we really think about that, like what emotion is beneath all of that, it's insecurity. And not only is it insecurity, but it's also at its base a degree of self-doubt. It's a degree of you don't quite accept yourself. You don't quite understand who you are. Because there's one thing I've learned from, trying to date some of these guys. Like, there's some men, some fine men, but, straight men too, who like trans women because they're the best of both worlds.
I hear that. Oh, fucking commercial. Sorry, y'all.
What was your favorite part of high school? Making that with your mom.
Shut the fuck up. I hate that commercial.
Right. And I've always massively hated that idea because
I know anybody talk about anybody mother, that's a punch in the face, right? Make it out your mom.
I'm the best of one.
Mama said knock you out. Mama said knock you out. You talk about my mom, you're gonna get knocked the fuck out.
The trans feminine world, I'm the best of my own world, Catherine's world. I'm not a combination of genders or a complicated whatever. But some men are attracted to that. And you know what? There are always going to be men who look at me and project a fetish onto me, look at me and project their own ideas about what's what onto me. And truly, I've had to sort of come to accept and embrace that has nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with me, right? And so I can't sort of walk around thinking that just because someone feels a certain way about trans people or have attraction to certain types of people doesn't mean that has really anything to do with me. Now, obviously, I don't want to date anyone who's trying to look through that. Like, I don't want to date someone. I've talked to stuff like I'll do a video at some point about the different types of men who like trans women. But one of the common reasons that I've heard was that some men feel like they can relate to trans women more. Now, trans women have vast experiences. We have vast, expressions and things like that. Some trans women, I'm sure, would probably live their lives being seen a certain way. Maybe they'll have more in common with a guy. I don't know. I don't, because that hasn't been my case. So I don't really get that, but that's something I can't really put up with. I don't want to date someone who's trying to look past my gender, right? But I recognize just because a man is bisexual doesn't mean that that's the case, right? Now, I will say that for me, there is a bit of a caveat for my preference with bi men. So, for example, both of my partners right now are pansexual, right? Both of them, they feel sort of, you can call me pan, you can call me bi, I don't really care. That's their particular position on the bisexual or pansexual thing, right? They don't really care either way. However, neither of them care. Both of these men are men who could, if pressured, admit that they've been with men, that they are attracted to men, that they're attracted to trans women, they're attracted to cis women. They do not care, right? They are willing to claim their ish, right? And for me, I can only date a man who's willing to claim their ish. I don't want to date someone who is so afraid of what everyone else is thinking that he has to deny
fuck everyone else.
And as a trans person, you run into this a lot. You run into these men who, they really, 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 really like trans women, right? But they've lived a life in which where they can't truly pursue trans women. They're married. They've got all these other, people in their lives. They haven't been honest with the people around them, so they can't even be honest with themselves, right? And so what ends up happening is you have these men who get into these marriages and they want to cheat, they want to cheat because they're not getting what they want, they want to cheat on their partners and have you be their little secret something, because at the end of the day, that's what they want. And this feeds into my polyamory, this feeds into a lot of my different ways of thinking about this stuff, but, I don't want to be with someone who isn't getting what they want and would feel the need to sort of be dishonest about it. Because if anything, one of the things I kind of understood about that guy who I thought right in my school was that he's a tortured soul. He's not being honest with himself, he's not being honest with people around him, and that's a rough life. And I'm not saying that that person can't come out on the other side of it, because you can, but it's a rough situation to be in. And if there's one thing, this may be me being idealistic, I don't really want to date or deal with a man who hasn't really examined who he is and where he is at. I like when men are very confident in their sexualities, they're very confident with themselves. I don't like someone who's still sort of going through the figuring out phase. And the reality is that most people who self-ID as heterosexual have never really examined that. I'm not saying examine that in a way that we're changed, but they haven't really examined their sexuality. It just sort of is this thing. And, this is maybe going to be a popular thing to say, because I know that a lot of people are outside the roles that I existed. I'm in the teen community, I'm in the sex positive community. And one of the things I've recognized is, I think oftentimes as men get a little bit older, right, that little bit of a bisexual curiosity that they might have had when they were younger stops being a thing that they deny themselves. I have met so many men who, in their early lives, they were like, I'm only straight, I'm straight. And then they get to a point where they're in a situation where they're being affirmed, they're being encouraged, they're being embraced, they're not being shamed for wanting what they want, and they're willing to pursue it, they're able to pursue it, right? And to me, that's a beautiful thing. It's very sad to observe people living in a state of denial to the point where they're not being happy with themselves, to the point where they're not actually being who they are. That's rough for me to want to be around. I understand it, I respect it, but it's rough for me to be around. So personally, when I say that I prefer bisexual men, I really prefer men who are openly so bisexual. There are a lot of men who are secretly, there are a lot of men who they have that little thing. There are a lot of men who they have bisexual tendencies, but it's not enough of a thing for them to feel the need to be outspoken. I just personally want to be with someone who, if they were cornered, if someone turned to them and cut their head, and tell me what you like, they're willing to say I like trans women and not care, because there's something so powerful to me about men who just don't care. I think that is one of the sexiest things in the world. I think that is so hot, so attractive when people just do not care. I think it's really sexy. Now, that all being said, I will say this. There are straight men, my ex being one of them, who also don't care, right? Who also do not care. But I will say, especially in the case of my ex, frequently with that comes a lot of sacrifice, right? You end up losing family connections that you might not lose. And for a lot of people, for a lot of men who feel this way, it's really a question of, is it worth it? Is it is my interest in trans women, or is my interest in men even enough for me to be open about this? Is this something that I don't want or desire enough to feel like I can talk about it, right? That's something that a lot of people end up asking themselves. Is this really important to me? Is this really a part of who I am, right? And I don't need men to have a particular answer about that at all. I just know that I don't want to date anyone who isn't ashamed of who they are, and isn't willing to claim who they are, and isn't willing to claim me. I spent way too many times wasting my time trying to uplift and defend a man's heterosexuality. I cannot think of anything more exhausting in this world, and there's a lot of exhausting things, than trying to maintain a man's heterosexuality. It is exhausting, it is often not worth it, and it's not fun. It's not fun, you know? So, my interest in bisexual men kind of really boils down to that. I don't like to date men who are so trapped within how people see them, that they can't be themselves. And I find that that's most people who identify as straight. Not everybody, not all, but most, certainly most. And I've dated a lot of people. Dated an awful lot of people. So yeah, I feel like that sums it up. Yeah, this was a good conversation. I would really love to know how you guys feel about this. If you're a bisexual man, I would love to hear from you and what your experiences have been, what your journey has been. I know, again, that a lot of bisexual men go through a lot of rejection by men. They go through a lot of, people saying they don't want anything to do with you if you are bisexual, right? There's an incredible amount of body erasure that happens, right? And that's all incredibly upsetting and frustrating. But I'll tell y'all, I'm going to tell you guys, I can't speak for everyone, obviously. I can only speak for myself. But in my personal circle of very sex positive, frequently, not all the time, feminist minded women, there's a lot of this out there who are bisexual men. Don't be afraid to tell them that you are. Anyway, on that note, I will see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in. If you guys are not already subscribed to this channel, I think you guys should. We upload videos here every Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time. And I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you guys will stick around and continue to learn, share, and grow with me. Bye.
True tea. I just want to say to a lot of y'all bisexual men out there, there is hope for y'all. Do not give up. Like I said, y'all are not the scum of the earth. Any that's gay males, we get scapegoated a lot. All right, love y'all.